Welcome to Money Mondays. I'm Dr. William Small, your money mentor, and I'm the founder of Dr. Will Enterprises and the host of Wealth Builder Seminars in Dallas, Texas. Today's video is part 6 of the Wealth Building Through Business series, and the goal of this series is to help you think about the business opportunities that always become available during any crisis, such as a national disaster or a medical pandemic like COVID, and hopefully it will serve to make you aware that you can build the wealth that you need to protect your family financially from the next crisis. And by the conclusion of this series, you will know unequivocally that you can no longer think like an employee. See, wealth and poverty are not states of money, ladies and gentlemen. They are states of mind. In order to be content being an employee, you had to be conditioned mentally to think like an employee. However, if you want to be wealthy, you must learn to think like a business owner rather than an employee. So let's talk about it. When we ended part 5 last week, we were talking about how the corona pandemic forced some people who are employees to realize that even with a good paying job, they were no better off financially than people who receive welfare or SSI. See, those people were dependents of the government, but as an employee, you are a Class B dependent of your employer. See, he can legally claim you as a dependent on his tax returns. Now, I hope this teaches some people to stop looking down their nose at other people who receive food stamps or other financial assistance from the government. You folks that have been conditioned by political ideology to have disdain for people who get welfare benefits are going to realize soon that Republican policies are going to push you into poverty too. But when they do, there won't be any welfare benefits or Social Security to save you because they will have killed those safety net programs too. Now, if you're a diehard Republican voter, you had better recognize that Republican anti-people policies are anti-you too. All right, you had better realize that Republican politicians despise poor white people more than illegal immigrants. Republican politicians let people get ill and die because they were hoping that the corona crisis was going to help them do naturally 4 things that they have always fought to do politically, which is to reduce the population, restrict the number of voters, eliminate the middle class, and to return to a 2-class system. See, the GOP has been fighting to move the country back to a time when there were only lords and serfs, or the haves and the have-nots. If you look at the states that have the highest poverty rates, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, and New Mexico, they are all controlled by Republican politicians. Republicans fight hard to kill public health programs like Obamacare and early childhood education. Thus, those same states have the unhealthiest and the most uneducated populations in the nation. Yet Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court are opposed to end Roe v. Wade and force women to give birth to children that will be doomed to a life of poverty in the red states and counties. Now, conservatives have been angry since the 1930s because the New Deal, the GI Bill, and other government initiatives, along with employee work rules, helped create a third or middle class. See, they have also been fighting hard since the 1930s to eliminate those so-called entitlement programs, such as Social Security and unemployment benefits that sustain the middle class, right? The reason they were not successful in doing so until the 1990s is voters did not allow them to control Congress for 40 years. Okay, I meant to say 40 years. That is until Newt Gingrich and the Tea Party crazies came to D.C. and began tearing down the government and working to eliminate the middle class. Thanks to GOP politics and big bank collusion, there's not only the illusion of a middle class in America. And the way most people maintain the illusion of a middle class is through employee income and debt. Whenever their income is not high enough to maintain a middle class lifestyle, those people use credit card debt to project the illusion of a middle class status. Now, people can complain that I'm being politically partisan, all right? But everything that I said are verifiable facts. They will say, well, what about all the homeless people in California and New York? See, the problem in those states are not political policy, all right, but rather the cost of living. The $400,000 home that a middle-class family could once afford in California is now $800,000. 40% of New York State residents live in New York City, where the vast majority are not homeowners. See, they rent apartments from the greedy Republican voting Donald Trump like landlords, okay? So the greed was so atrocious that the city had to enact rent control laws to reduce price gouging. But even with price controls, people in New York City still pay $2,000 or $3,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. The reality is that all Republican policy or political actions are anti-people. All Republican legislation is anti-people legislation, which is pure evil. You can tell these people are the devil's disciples because they will give their legislative proposal a name that misleads you into believing that they will help you when they will in fact screw you. Now, I'm not saying this to be partisan, but rather to reveal the facts to those of you who don't pay close attention to politics, all right? Politics is not about making laws. Politics are all about splitting up the money or determining who gets how much of what, where, and when. You will be forced into poverty if Republicans have their way. So it's imperative that you begin looking for a way to make money independently of being an employee. Republicans have been a virus on American society and the economy since the Nixon administration. Every time, not sometime, every time they occupy the presidency, some kind of scandal or tragedy happens in the economy and people get indicted and or are convicted and go to prison. Reagan ran up the national debt by 400% and had the Iran-Contra scandal, and something like 26 people from his administration was criminally indicted. Bush Sr. had the savings and loan scandal where the government had to bail out the banks and insurance companies to keep the economy from collapsing. Bush Jr. had the Enron scandal, the Big Five accounting scandal, and the housing market bubble that burst, which caused the economy to go into a death spiral. And even he had 16 people from his administration face criminal indictments. Trump gave a $2 trillion tax cut to the wealthy, and he had 89 people face criminal indictment, but he pardoned most of them. Once again, due to Republican greed, theft, and mismanagement, the government, meaning middle-class taxpayers, had to bail out the banks or pay the nation's bills without any substantial help from the wealthy in this country. Now, I always shake my head whenever I hear Republican voters complain about their tax dollars going to feed the poor, but they never complain about their tax dollars going to feed the military-industrial complex, give tax breaks to the rich, or to bail out banks. Middle-class taxpayers need to open their eyes and realize that wealth is a combination of income and assets, okay? And that's just an illusion, all right? The vast majority of their net worth is based on the value of their home that they do not actually own. See, most people die before they even pay their mortgage off. And as long as they still have a mortgage, the bank owns that home. Therefore, the value in that home actually belongs to the bank, not them. If middle-class people don't open their eyes, one day soon they will be forced to realize that buying into the American dream of a middle-class lifestyle and using credit card debt to maintain the illusion of it was a mistake. The reason they happily bought into the illusion of the American dream is because they had been unwittingly conditioned mentally to think like an employee. See, people that have an employee mentality will finally be forced to realize one day that the things that they thought were assets were actually liabilities because they were acquired on credit. The net worth that they tricked you into believing that you had will turn out to be net zero. Pretty soon, the division between the have and the have-not will become a shocking reality. See, the people that have real wealth will be easy to identify, and the people who have been projecting the illusion of being middle class through credit will see that illusion crash and fall to the ground like a broken mirror. They will be forced to see their economic reality through those broken glass pieces, and this will be devastating to most middle-class families very quickly if Republicans gain control of the Congress in 2023. See, a lot of these families still have not fully recovered from the damage of the corona pandemic caused to them financially, and most of them ate through their savings and late or no payments on their bills for 2 years, diminished their credit worthiness. So if you're in a situation, you should be doing something now to keep your family from suffering by increasing your financial literacy. Now, I created a course on Thinkific titled Money Does Grow on Trees that is designed to help you increase your financial literacy and learn how to build wealth for your family exponentially. You'll learn how to use the knowledge, gifts, talents, and abilities that every last one of us was born with inherently to create a legacy of wealth for the next 2 or 3 generations of your family. Now, if you think that you can't afford to pay for it, the truth is you can't afford not to. The price of knowledge is always lower than the cost of ignorance. You can pretend that you don't have the money and keep struggling financially, or you can make the sacrifice of a few less bottles of beer, a few less packs of cigarettes, or bags of chips to learn how to make your family wealthy. Brothers and sisters, I'm going to keep saying this until I hear everyone repeating it in their sleep. You cannot change your money until you first change your mind. And the quickest way to change your money is by increasing your financial literacy. You can't do better until you know better, all right? And increasing your financial literacy will help you break out of the mentality that allowed you to live comfortably in employee captivity. So many of the companies that you depend on for your income to sustain your family are going to go out of business because they are still operating on the industrial age thinking, all right? Most of the world has moved out of the industrial age into the digital age, yes, yet most Fortune 500 corporations are still hoping that this will pass and they can get back to their old way of doing business. That is the type of thinking that caused Blockbuster Videos to lose their business to Netflix, who offer digital video rentals, okay? So the time for a new way of thinking or a new way of working and earning income is upon us right now. You don't have time to wait to make the changes that you need in order to protect your family financially. You don't have time to wait until you can afford to spend the money to learn how to become wealthy. Those who can make the changes and adjustments quickly will reap the benefits. And as always, the early birds will get the worms, and those who shoot first will get to eat what they kill. And those who make the first move to transition into the digital age, thinking about business, wealth, and employee income, will profit the most financially. Now, I saw it coming back in the late 70s, so I set myself up to receive $84,000 every year in passive income. And I knew the industrial age was dying and the digital age was coming, so I planned early to take advantage of it financially. And just let me tell you a little story quickly, okay, about how I saw it coming when most people couldn't. When the internet was first created, it was a military asset called the Worldwide Military Command and Control System. I was in the military in the 80s where I had access to the internet when it was not available yet to the general public. I could see the way that we communicate and acquire information was going to change, and therefore change the way that we do business, which depends heavily on communication, would change also. So now, I was working in the financial services industry while I was in the military also, and being in those two positions simultaneously gave me the ability to recognize that the next wave of Fortune 500 level business wealth was going to come through information acquisition and effective market communications. So I took advantage of my access to the internet to forecast what would be happening in business markets, right? And that is where I found the information that I use to make my financial services clients millionaires. One of the positive things that emerged as a result of the COVID-19 crisis is a lot of business owners had to find a way to do business online. See, many were forced, for example, to decide whether or not they actually needed office space, and the answer was a resounding no. And consequently, it reduced their operating costs significantly. Twitter informed its employees that they could work from home permanently, all right, okay? A lot of companies allowed their employees to work from home then. So most of them are reverting back now to industrial age thinking, and they're demanding that their employees return to an office setting. So it's time for you to realize that if you're working for a company that is still operating on industrial age thinking, there is no such thing as job security for you. Like Blockbuster, that company will be out of business sooner or later, and you would be wise then to surmise that it might be sooner rather than later and make plans to protect your family financially. All right? Amen. Well, that's all that I have for now. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, share this video with your family and friends, and I'll be back with something new that nobody told you. Until then, remember that God loves you, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'll see you next time on Wealth Building Seminars.